last night, for whatever reason, I was in a Bon Scott mood. So I was listening to a lot of Bon Scott era AC/DC. And I just got curious. So I looked it up and I realized that most of the Bon Scott AC/DC catalog, at least the stuff that got really famous, Bon Scott was in his 30s when that was all released, which kind of goes against the narrative of in your 20s, right? Even Angus Young was in his late 30s when Thunderstruck was released, right? As a random example. So, do you think that like a band really has to be in their 20s, or can 30 still be?
Remember, AC/DC has been around since 1973, so they were young when they started. Bon Scott was actually the second vocalist for AC/DC. The first guy was a guy named Dave Evans, who I think lasted less than a year. And there was no guarantee that AC/DC was going to continue after Bon Scott died. But then Brian Johnson comes along and they release Back in Black, and it sells 45 million records. And okay, things are fine. But they had been established in certain parts of the world already. They were big in Britain. They were big in Australia, of course, and they were a medium level band through the Bon Scott years in America. I remember seeing them open for Aerosmith in 1978, I think. I think it was the Sin City album they were touring. And they were just starting to happen. And you would hear, Highway to Hell on the radio, and you'd hear, that would be the big ones, Highway to Hell. But you would also hear a whole lot of Rosie. You would hear Big Balls. That was another one that was popular for a while. I'm trying to think what others. But anyway, yeah, they didn't really explode until Back in Black.
Here you go. Do you prefer Bon Scott or Brian Johnson?
I like them both. I really do. AC/DC is just one of those bands that have made that incredible transition after losing their lead singer in tragic circumstances. I do remember when Back in Black came out. The first song I heard from the Brian Johnson era AC/DC, his voice just cut like it was like a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what this was all about. But then you listen to the record over and over again and you go, okay, this is fine.
Especially at that time, I don't really think there's anybody singing like that, at least in the mainstream.
No, there was not. You didn't have a lot of that stuff, no.
Hey guys, so just to expand on what I was saying about Bon Scott being in his 30s when some of his most iconic AC/DC work was released, here are the specific details. He was 30 years old when both Dirty Deeds and Let There Be Rock were released. He was 31 when Powerage was released, and he was 33 when Highway to Hell was released. For Brian Johnson, he was 32 when Back in Black was released, 34 when For Those About to Rock was released, and so on. As a matter of fact, The Razor's Edge, the record containing Thunderstruck, which is arguably AC/DC's most famous song, that album was released on September 24th, 1990, less than 2 weeks prior to Brian Johnson's 43rd birthday. In a culture where it's often portrayed that if you don't make it in your 20s, you have no chance, it is worth noting that nearly all of AC/DC's most iconic work was released when their vocalists Bon Scott and Brian Johnson were both in their 30s and beyond for Brian Johnson. I really want to emphasize that I said iconic work. There are artists, of course, of all ages who release music, but again, there's this idea in our society that if a musical artist wants to be iconic, they have to release music in their 20s. Well, again, Brian Johnson was nearly 43 when AC/DC released Thunderstruck, one of the most iconic songs in rock history. This isn't to say that you shouldn't take advantage of your 20s and pursue your goals at that point in time, but if you don't make it in your 20s, that's not to suggest that you have no shot anymore, because there are plenty of examples of people who did make it after their 20s. If you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe for more. All the videos on this channel are original. I'm the one conducting and editing all the interviews and all the videos, so if you guys like what you see and you want to support, the best way to do so is honestly just to subscribe. Thanks for watching.